Thank you. Good morning. Maybe I should start by sharing my screen first. And can I invite you all to join my session by logging into this www.menti.com. And when they ask for the code, you just type in this 83785559. Now, this information will be available on all the slides on the top. And if you join in, you will be able to interact with me during this session. And I would like to thank Alex for his introduction. And I would like to thank Colin, Kevin, and the OC for giving me this opportunity to talk about the development of e-learning at the Hong Kong College of Medicine, Academy of Medicine. Well, COVID is obviously very disruptive to our usual teaching and learning. And as a result, there are many tips on how to do it. And most of those will involve the use of computers, smart devices, and the internet, what we call e-learning. And threats can become opportunities. And this puts e-learning into one of the top 3 items we have been selected in the survey of all the colleges under the Hong Kong Academy of Medicine before we go on this planning retreat of the ILCM when I was the honorary director. And at the same time, the government funded a e-learning project for the academy, and I am assigned a responsibility to lead the project, and hence I'm here today. So let's start by having your own experience. I'm sure that you all have been participated in e-learning of one form or another, including what we are doing now. Can you use your smartphone, log in, and describe your experience? I have given you the option of typing in up to 3, but if you want to use only 1 or 2, no problem. So just type in your descriptor in your smartphone, 1, 2, or 3, and then submit it, and we will see that on the screen. Let's see whether this technology works or not. So in your smartphone, you should have this now, and inside there should be item for you to, yeah. So something say basic, happy, but also disappointed, self-managed, fun, challenging. Okay. So disappointed become quite big. I see that. Let's wait a little bit longer to see. Some say left out. That means they're not being taken care of, right? And happy becomes bigger. I don't know why it's happy, because it's fun, because you don't have to travel, but it can be challenging as well, okay? Excellent. So I see that happy becomes bigger than disappointed now. But you need to look into the technology. Can they fit the schedule well? Well, some say black screen. I don't exactly know why. Okay, so I see that you have quite a variety of different sort of experiences with it. So basically happy. But of course, we also want it to be very effective. And this SAMR model stands for the different stages or ways in which technology or e-learning can be used, applied in our learning. If you look at the 4 drinks from Starbucks, it means how different it is from the conventional coffee. It can be a simple substitution, or you can add a little bit of milk to augment it a little bit, right? Or it can be quite different. You modify the caramel macchiato. If you use pumpkin spice, it is redefined. The drink is very different. So let's look at it. Now today, because of the isolation need, I cannot come to give the lecture. So I use Zoom to give the lecture. I use exactly the same presentation to give the same talk. What do you think it is? Redefinition, modification, substitution, redefinition. Okay. Personally, I would think that it adds nothing to the talk. It is the same talk. So for the learning activity, there is nothing gained. I would call it a substitution. But now, in addition to that, I interact with you using Mentimeter so that you can tell me whether you understand something as I do it. What do you think? It's not substitution, right? The learning experience is heightened a little bit, but basically it is still the same passive talk. So I would call it augmentation instead of really change a lot. Okay, so for me, it's augmentation. For you, it's modification. Doesn't matter. We're always different, isn't it? Now I tell you this experience of mine in the tutorial. My colleague in the Board of Intensive Care Medicine in charge of the tutorials tell me that there are some trainees who cannot complete the compulsory number of tutorials because not all of them can come at the time. Sometimes they may have to work, okay? And if they have to wait for another cycle, it will be in 1 year's time. So I tried this online web-based application called Puzzle, which actually you can try it free of charge. I recorded my PowerPoint and saved it as an MP4 file and then uploaded it into this place. And then I can add questions at any point of time in the video. No need to wait until the end of the video. So I think that will be more stimulating if you choose the right time. Now, this can be an open-ended question. This can also be an MCQ question. For an MCQ, they do it, they know whether they're right or wrong. For the open question, I need to mark it. And for both types, I can add comments. I can tell them why they're wrong, my own ideas, what they have to think about as well. And then I will get a summary. I know who have attended, who have not. And I know their sort of performance during the tutorial as well. So what do you think this tutorial represents? Modification? Well, I think it's a little bit more than the augmentation we have, isn't it? Is it redefinition? Personally, I would think that this is modification rather than really redefinition because it is still teacher-centered. It is still, I define what they have to learn. But I would like you to think that actually these e-learning do have the potential of doing something really different. And pedagogy or self-determined learning is an interesting concept that guides this sort of development. What is it? It means that based on a lot of other sort of studies, brain studies, we find that because of our all past experience, that past learning, our brains are all very different. So when you are facing a learning experience, somebody is ready, some may not be. For example, just that tutorial I mentioned about. For a trainee who has never undergone any transportation of critically ill patient versus somebody who has just transported one patient down into the CT scanner and then something wrong happened and is not doing it very well, I think the motivation would be very different. And so if we can allow the learning to occur when the learner is ready, when they have a choice, it will be much more effective. And actually, I can make it more active. In addition to the more didactic lectures, I can ask them to do something. For example, they have to redesign the checklist used for transportation based their understanding. The e-learning technology can provide them with the means to explore the literature, how to design what other people have done. They can share that with other trainers or trainees, right? Now they can connect to the trainer who can give them feedbacks, guidance, support, ideas. They can collaborate together to work out this form. I can actually make it even interprofessional. So some nurses join in to do this together. Together, they will create this form. And then the learner, the instructor can guide them in the reflection what can be better in this exercise and what can be better in the learning itself. So that will be pedagogy. That will be what we want them to do. And obviously we have limitations. How do you learn a psychomotor skill using e-learning? But we need not isolate face-to-face learning from online learning. We can blend them together. So even for, say, insertion of a central line, which is a psychomotor skill, if you look into our ICM curriculum here, there will be a large chunk of knowledge. You need to know the anatomy, the methods, the indication, blah, blah, blah. So in all this sort of task-centered learning, which takes place in the actual clinical setting or in the simulation center, when you choose the learning task, before you go and apply it and then reflect and integrate, you obviously need to activate the knowledge. You give them the knowledge basis, and you need to demonstrate the skill, or we call it modeling. And both these two, activation and knowledge and demonstration of modeling, can be done very effectively using e-learning itself. So therefore, you can start by having individual study, so they have some basic ideas, they can search for some information, they can work together, collaboration, and then we can give them these feedbacks synchronously or asynchronously. Now we're doing synchronously. When we're talking about the Edpuzzle, it will be asynchronous. They don't have to be at the same time. And it can be verbal, like my feedback in Edpuzzle, or it can, written in the Edpuzzle, or it can be verbal. And obviously, when you go to really practice it, observe it, like in a workplace-based assessment, nothing replaces face-to-face learning. So, but the e-learning will get the learner prepared before they really apply it. And hopefully, by blending this together, we can transform a passive listening into a more engaged and reflective learning exercise. And in the future, obviously, we can blend it together with other technology like virtual reality, 5G as well. And I think that e-learning have a role in facilitating competence-based medical education by making it more visible. How do we link up our syllabus, the intended outcome, together with our series of tutorials and other learning activities and the assessment together? And also, as I told you, we can use some of these learning activity like a tutorial or other things or workplace-based assessment, and this can lump into the e-portfolio, and this aggregation of information can allow us to look at the performance of our trainees more clearly and also earlier, so that we can give them feedback before they fail the final examination. And actually in the United States, we heard that some schools, some universities do not limit them to learning in their own. If you find your own university is not teaching that geometry module very well, you can Uber a teacher from, say, Harvard or Stanford, teach you online, give you assessment online, and because of the blockchain technology, this is recognized, and you can replace it. So you do not limit your own learning from your own school. You can use distance learning and learn from the best in the world. I don't know whether to apply to our situation or not. So what are your thoughts now after listening to those things? Again, you can use the same thing, word cloud, to express your ideas here. Up to 3 descriptors. Hopeful, okay? And afterwards, I can download these, and then you can compare the 2 word clouds to see whether it is different or not. Innovative, multifunctional, complicated. It is complicated. That's why it needs learning, right? It needs training. And how to apply to us? Well, certainly we can apply to us, but obviously we need to know the domain knowledge in your own field. And I hope that I have given a little bit of examples innovative, grateful. It is a challenge. Yes, it is challenging. Education is challenging, but if we do not move forward, we will be behind. In the interest of time, let's go on. I see that innovative is still the biggest word. Now, we talk about a little bit of why we need to do e-learning. Let's look at how we are doing it. Certainly, when we introduce simulation-based medical education, we need to introduce the technology, the mannequins, the AV system, etc. But we also need to look into the education aspect. The educator have to learn how to transform the education need into scenarios and how to run it so they are real to give that fidelity. And most importantly, how to guide the reflection using debriefing. And the situation is very similar in e-learning as well. We need to introduce the technology. And we started by looking into a learning management system, which is an electronic platform that can help us to create, to organize and deliver the content, to communicate and collaborate, to do assessment, and also for administration. I tried to ask one of the professors from the school. I finished my Master of Education, and he come up with this thing like it is nothing simple, and it will take time, and you need to set up a pilot group with the different stakeholders. So we do it. We have this EHKAM task force. I think Alex is in that task force with me, and we have a three-member team, project team, to help us to do the work. And we have gone through the 5 stages for the evaluation we have selected. So we have analyzed the needs by doing online surveys as well as 8 focus groups. And based on those, we analyze it and distill it into the requirements. We read the number of products, a lot of products available, but most of them for business purpose. Suitable for us, limited. And we have evaluated 2 of them. And based on those evaluations by everybody from the different colleges, and also a selection panel, we have selected a product and we have recommended to the Council of the Academy, which 2 days ago they have approved. So I can tell you the product we have chosen is Canvas. So the whole process is actually a little bit of an engagement process. So before this talk, are you aware of this EHKAM? So there's still a lot of work we have to do, isn't it, to let people be aware of this. And I think that I hope that this talk is one of them so that we know that something is going on. And the next phase will be, we'll need to implement it, right? We'll plan how to do it, configure it. And most of the time we'll be doing train the trainer. So some people from every college will be trained, they configure, and then the technical people will integrate the system with other electronic systems that exist already in the college, including your e-portfolio system if you have one. And then we'll test and go live. Most likely this will be early August. We will have that available. And apart from the LMS, actually, we also explore and learn many other plugins to help. We are using Zoom now together with Mentimeter. Nearport is something quite similar to Mentimeter, except that without paying, you can do a little bit more than Mentimeter. So you can try out Nearport free of charge to see whether you like it or not. Interactive lectures with your learners. We talk about Edpuzzle, which you can do interactive videos. And Slack is a more sophisticated form of WhatsApp, and Miro and Google Slide, you can use it for collaboration online. So is there any other suggestions for other technology for us to explore based on your experience of what you heard about? You can tell me, and then we can try to go on. it is usually a little bit more challenging for people to put down words like this, isn't it? I would like you to experience a little bit and just show you that we can have this sort of interaction as well. So if you build up a little bit more relationship and have a bit more time, you can use this. But in the interest of time, let's go on. You can tell me later on. I think the education aspect is obviously very important. And we have, as Alex said, piloted one of the Learning Online Educator course last year towards the end. We reflected upon it. People say that it's useful, but it's a cognitive overload. So we decided to extend the period from 2 weeks to 3 months so that they can have that flexibility and they can have that freedom, which I mentioned about. And a lot of the more of the things that we teach in the face-to-face, we can put it online so they can have their own time to do it. And also we decided that we should make it a team-based. The team will be of the same specialty. Say, for example, if 5 or 6 of the emergency physicians are available, they can form a team and join the next course. What will be the course like? We will use the experiential learning and we'll use a whole sort of design, which means the trainees, the learners will go through a whole learning experience itself. And the learning experience we use will be, they learn about this cognitive theory of multimedia learning to prepare online training materials. And during this, we will give them the guidance that they will learn in the course. So this is the whole, which will form the experiential basis for them to learn the parts. And these learning skills are based on constructivism. And we base all the skills on the most popular model for e-learning based on constructivism, which is called the community of inquiry model. We'll teach the parts how to build social presence and how to look into the cognitive presence of the learners and use teaching guide presence to build the course and then guide the learning. And then after that, the learners will move all this into a whole and build a small module of e-learning and teach each other. And then we'll reflect on this whole learning and teaching experience. And so, would you be interested to participate in our next course in July to October? Okay, so we have more than 5 from the emergency college. Maybe you can contact Alex or contact Ralph so that you can form a team to come. And that ends my talk. And this now come to the Q&A time, which I think Alex can take over. And if you have questions, you can either type in here, we can read it, or you can use your usual platform and ask the questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Toso, for your innovative, interactive, and wonderful talk. And so I must say, I really enjoyed the LOL course, and I did learn a lot, and I tried some of the skills to my students as well. So so far I haven't seen any questions asked, so maybe I take the privilege to ask the first question. So in my experience, I have really varied experience with my students. So I try to use Nearpod to teach them to do something interactive like you did today. And I found that sometimes they are really engaged, and I really enjoy that experience. But sometimes some students, they are really not engaged. And I remember once I delivered a tutorial to some nursing students, and none of them respond to me.
I see.
And so I don't know what happened. And would you share with us some tips to engage students?
Yes, I think it's a complicated question because humans are all very different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you remember this model, I think technology is what will enable us to do something, but we do not necessarily do it. And in this constructive, this COI model, one very important aspect is social presence, which means that we have to build up some sort of relationship between the learner and the teacher, and also amongst the learners. And also, I think psychological safety is a very important aspect. Say, for example, if you look into what we have done so far, if I use multiple choice questions, the response is much better, the polling things. If I ask them to write something, especially if they need to identify themselves, people will be very, very reluctant. So I think that building up the social presence by building up relationship, a little bit of introduction, etc., I think it helps as well. And also, I don't know whether that you may be a little bit of a figure of authority to the student nurses, and so they may be a little bit more, find their experience more, how do you say it?
So afraid to ask, maybe.
Intimidating, maybe, right? Yeah, intimidating. Yes. Yeah, yes. And also the meaning of asking the meaning of the question is also important. Because to us, in our culture, answering a question is to show our ability of performance. But actually in the course, when we ask a question is to find out whether I deliver my message clearly, whether you understand me, whether there is a need to clarify things. So that will be an important thing. So actually there is a school of thought nowadays that when I ask questions, I will not go and ask for volunteers, but I pick on people to ask. It seems to be counterintuitive, but they say that actually evidence shows that this sort of interaction is even more effective, but probably more difficult to do it online. But I think that, so the question seems simple, but actually it can be quite complicated. I see something happy on the chat, isn't it?
Yeah. So Thomas still follow up on that, I think. And he said he had concern that the medical students are not well engaged after years of social distancing. And there is a risk of lacking self-discipline, group dynamics, and human interactions. Is there any way to bridge the gap in medical education in distant learning, e-learning? Yeah. So
I would say that,
Is it exaggerated, this situation?
Sorry?
Yeah, so what's your comment also? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, because I don't know what is the existing form of learning. As I say, when I use that example of tutorial, that is still very passive learning. You just listen, and I just see whether you understand or not. If we can use more participatory, active learning, I think the engagement level will be more. And the word discipline will be a little bit against the idea of having them direct their own learning or determine their own learning. In our thinking, we say that humans actually have this ability to guide themselves to learn. You don't have to have a teacher to discipline them if you can arouse their interest, if you can show that this is relevant and the learning itself is interesting. That is my bias.
Yeah, but I think I can reflect on Dr. Sill's comments too, because many a time when I deliver a Zoom tutorial, many of my students just don't show the face, and so it's sometimes really disappoint. It's sometimes really disappoint the educators.
It is.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly. And well, what can I say? Some people say that how do we move from one level of teaching to the other? The first level is that this is a good student. They learn a lot. This is the first level. The second level, he is a good teacher. He teaches very well. But the third level is that I am a teacher who can build a learning activity that can engage the student in the participation, and then I can guide them in the learning. So the both parts, the participation, but the participation will depend on we build a design, a learning activity which is engaging. And of course that will be demanding. That is not easy. Yeah.
So thank you, Taraso, for your excellent talk. And as always, I learned a lot from you. But for the interest of time, let's move on to our next speaker.